The kiss happened so fast that neither of them saw it coming. One moment they were shouting across her office, papers scattered across the floor, and the next, her lips were on his, her fingers gripping his collar like she might push him away or pull him closer. For Mark Wilson, single father of two and perpetually on thin ice with his Ice Queen boss, it was the moment everything changed. Hey everyone, if you're enjoying this story so far, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more emotional workplace romances that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Now, let's dive deeper into Mark and Victoria's complicated journey. Mark's alarm blared at 5:30 a.m., as it did every weekday morning. He groaned, slapping at his phone before the noise woke Emma and Liam. The apartment was small, too small for a family of three, but it was all he could afford on his salary as a marketing coordinator at Pinnacle Advertising. He shuffled to the kitchen, starting the coffee maker before heading to the shower. The morning routine was a carefully choreographed dance: shower while the kids slept, make lunches while they ate breakfast, then hustle everyone out the door by 7:15 to drop the kids at school before battling traffic to make it to work by 8:30. Today, like most days, he was cutting it close. Victoria Winters, his department head of 6 months, had made it abundantly clear that tardiness was unacceptable. Even a minute late earned her signature ice-cold stare, the one that made even the most confident executives shrink in their seats. "Daddy, Emma took my dinosaur cereal bowl again." Liam's voice carried from the kitchen. Mark sighed, tucking in his shirt as he emerged from the bathroom. "Emma, please give your brother his bowl. You know it's his favorite." Emma, 9 years old and already showing the stubborn streak she'd inherited from her mother, rolled her eyes dramatically. "It's just a bowl." "It's not just a bowl to him," Mark said gently, kneeling beside his daughter. "Sometimes the little things matter most, especially when everything else is changing." The divorce had been finalized 14 months ago, but the wounds were still fresh. Sarah had moved across the country with her new husband, leaving Mark to raise their children alone. The monthly video calls weren't enough, especially for 7-year-old Liam, who still asked when mommy was coming home. By some miracle, they made it out the door on time. Mark dropped the kids at school with kisses and promises to be there for pickup, a promise he prayed he could keep. Victoria had scheduled a client presentation for 4:30 p.m., cutting it dangerously close to when the after-school program ended at 5:30. The Pinnacle Advertising office hummed with activity when Mark arrived. He slipped into his cubicle, powering up his computer just as the clock hit 8:29. "Cutting it close again, Wilson." Victoria's voice sent a chill down his spine. She stood at his cubicle entrance, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit, her dark hair pulled back in a severe bun that emphasized her sharp cheekbones and piercing blue eyes. "Good morning, Ms. Winters," Mark said, forcing a smile. "I'm actually on time today." "Barely." She placed a folder on his desk. "I need the Henderson campaign revisions by noon. And don't forget the client meeting at 4:30. "About that meeting," Mark began, "I was wondering if we could possibly move it up. I need to pick up my kids by—" "Your personal schedule isn't my concern," Victoria cut him off. "The client specified 4:30. Be there." She turned on her heel and walked away, leaving Mark staring after her. His colleague, Damon, leaned over from the neighboring cubicle. "Ice Queen strikes again. What did you do to make her hate you so much?" Mark shook his head. "Exist, apparently." The truth was more complicated. Mark had been at Pinnacle for 5 years, consistently receiving excellent reviews until Victoria took over the department. From day one, she'd seemed determined to find fault with his work, scheduling meetings that conflicted with his childcare responsibilities and assigning him impossible deadlines. He suspected she was trying to push him out. Single parents didn't fit into Victoria's vision of a dedicated workforce willing to sacrifice everything for the company. Mark had overheard her telling the CEO that employees with too many outside commitments lack the necessary focus. But he couldn't afford to lose this job. Not with 2 children depending on him, not with the mortgage barely manageable on his current salary, and certainly not in the current job market. By 11:45, Mark had finished the Henderson revisions. He emailed them to Victoria, then headed to the break room for lunch, a sad peanut butter sandwich he'd made while the kids ate breakfast. He was surprised to find Victoria there, sitting alone at a table, picking at a salad while reviewing documents. She rarely ate in the break room, preferring the solitude of her office. "Excuse me," Mark said, heading for the refrigerator. Victoria glanced up, her expression unreadable. "The Henderson revisions are acceptable," she said, returning to her documents. From Victoria, acceptable was practically a standing ovation. "Thank you," Mark replied, taken aback by the almost compliment. He sat at a table across the room, pulling out his phone to check for messages from the school. There was one: Emma wasn't feeling well. The nurse said it wasn't serious, but she'd be more comfortable if someone could pick her up. Mark closed his eyes, feeling the familiar weight of impossible choices. If he left now to get Emma, he'd miss the client meeting. If he missed the client meeting, Victoria would have the excuse she needed to fire him. "Problem, Wilson?" Victoria's voice startled him. He looked up to find her watching him, one eyebrow raised. "My daughter's sick at school," he admitted. "Nothing serious, but they want someone to pick her up. And let me guess, you're wondering how to do that and make the 4:30 meeting." Her tone was flat, but something flickered in her eyes. Annoyance? Or was it something else? "I'll figure it out," Mark said, already scrolling through his contacts, wondering if any of his neighbors might be home. Victoria gathered her papers, standing to leave. "The Henderson client is expecting you specifically. Your absence would jeopardize the account." "I understand," Mark said, his jaw tight. "I'll be there." She paused, studying him for a moment. "See that you are." After calling in every favor he could think of, Mark finally reached his elderly neighbor, Mrs. Patel, who agreed to pick up Emma and watch both children until he could get home. He texted Emma to let her know, promising to be there as soon as possible with her favorite soup. The client meeting went surprisingly well. Mark's presentation was flawless, and the Henderson team seemed impressed with the campaign revisions. Even Victoria nodded approvingly as the clients filed out, shaking hands and promising to finalize the deal by the end of the week. "Good work," she said curtly as the conference room emptied. "Though your closing could have been stronger." Mark bit back a retort, gathering his materials. It was 5:45 p.m., already 15 minutes past when he should have picked up Liam. "Thank you for the feedback. If there's nothing else, I need to get to my children." Victoria's expression hardened. "Actually, there is something else. The quarterly reports need to be updated with today's numbers. I need them on my desk before you leave." Mark stared at her in disbelief. "That will take at least an hour. Then I suggest you work efficiently." She turned to leave. "No." The word hung in the air between them. Victoria slowly turned back, her eyes narrowed. "Excuse me?" "I said no." Mark's heart hammered in his chest, but he stood his ground. "My daughter is sick, my son is waiting, and I've already arranged emergency childcare to accommodate this meeting. The reports can wait until tomorrow." Victoria's face flushed. "My office. Now." The door to Victoria's office slammed behind them. She rounded on him, fury radiating from every pore. "How dare you refuse a direct request in front of clients?" "They were already gone," Mark countered, his own anger rising. "And how dare you consistently put me in impossible situations? You've been trying to force me out since you started here." "Don't be ridiculous," Victoria snapped. "I hold everyone to the same standards." "No, you don't. You schedule meetings at times you know conflict with my childcare. You give me last-minute assignments with impossible deadlines. You criticize my work more harshly than anyone else's. Perhaps if you were as dedicated to your job as you are to your personal life. My personal life? Mark interrupted, his voice rising. You mean my children? The two small humans who depend on me for everything since their mother walked out? That's not a personal life, Victoria. That's my life. This is a workplace, not a daycare center, Victoria shot back. Your family problems aren't my concern. They're not problems, they're responsibilities. Responsibilities I take seriously, just like I take this job seriously. I've never missed a deadline. My clients are happy. My work is good. The only problem here is your unreasonable expectations. Victoria stepped closer, her eyes flashing. Unreasonable? I expect professionalism and commitment. No, you expect people to have no life outside these walls. But here's the reality, I'm a father first. Always. If that's incompatible with working here, then maybe it's time I looked elsewhere. Something shifted in Victoria's expression, a flicker of panic quickly masked by anger. Is that a resignation? It's a reality check, Mark said, lowering his voice. I need this job. But my kids need me more. So if you want me gone, you'll have to fire me. Otherwise, we need to find a way to make this work. Victoria turned away, moving to the window that overlooked the city. The setting sun cast her profile in gold, softening her features. For a moment, she looked almost vulnerable. My father was never there, she said quietly, so quietly Mark wasn't sure he'd heard correctly. He was always working. Building his empire. Missing birthdays, school plays, graduations. He said it was all for us, but really, it was for him. Mark remained silent, sensing she wasn't finished. I swore I'd never be like him, she continued. I'd be successful on my own terms. No distractions, no divided loyalties. Just pure focus and determination. She turned back to face him, her expression unreadable. And then you come along, somehow managing to be both a dedicated father and good at your job, and it challenges everything I thought I knew. Mark blinked, stunned by the admission. Victoria, I don't hate you, Mark, she said, using his first name for perhaps the first time. I envy you. Your clarity. Your certainty about what matters. The confession hung in the air between them, changing the atmosphere in the room. Mark took a step toward her, not sure what he intended to say or do. You should go, Victoria said suddenly, her professional mask slipping back into place. Your children are waiting. We're not finished here, Mark said, unwilling to let this moment of honesty evaporate. Yes, we are. Victoria moved toward her desk, putting the furniture between them like a barrier. We'll discuss schedule accommodations tomorrow. Victoria. That's all, Mr. Wilson. Mark stood his ground. No, it's not all. You can't just open up like that and then shut down again. That's not how this works. This? Victoria's eyebrow arched. And what exactly is this? A conversation. A real one, for once. Not boss and employee, just two people trying to understand each other. Victoria's laugh was brittle. Understanding isn't in my job description. Maybe that's the problem, Mark said, moving closer to her desk. You've been so focused on being the perfect boss that you've forgotten how to be a person. Her eyes flashed dangerously. You're crossing a line, Wilson. You crossed it first when you admitted you envied me, he countered. Why? What is it you really want, Victoria? What I want, she said, her voice rising as she came around the desk to face him, is for you to do your job without making excuses. What I want is to run this department without having to accommodate everyone's personal crises. What I want. She stopped abruptly, standing so close that Mark could see the flecks of gray in her blue eyes, could smell her subtle perfume. What do you want, Victoria? he asked softly. And then it happened. Later, neither could say who moved first. One moment they were arguing, tension crackling between them like electricity, and the next, her lips were on his, her fingers gripping his collar. The kiss was brief but intense, a release of months of tension transformed into something entirely unexpected. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard, staring at each other in shock. Victoria stepped back first, her hand rising to her lips as if she couldn't believe what they'd done. That was unexpected, Mark finished for her. Inappropriate, she corrected, though her voice lacked conviction. You should go. Your children are waiting, Mark nodded. But we need to talk about this. Tomorrow? Victoria hesitated, then gave a small nod. Tomorrow. My office, 9 a.m. Mark gathered his things, pausing at the door. For what it's worth, Victoria, I think you're wrong about yourself. You're not like your father. You care too much to be that cold. He left before she could respond, his mind reeling from everything that had just happened. Emma was asleep on Mrs. Patel's couch when Mark arrived, her cheeks still flushed with fever. Liam was sitting cross-legged on the floor, drawing pictures of dinosaurs. Daddy, he exclaimed, jumping up to hug Mark's legs. You're super late. I know, buddy. I'm sorry, Mark said, ruffling his son's hair. Work was complicated today. Mrs. Patel emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. The girl has a fever, but she ate some soup. The boy has done his homework and had dinner. Mrs. Patel, you're a lifesaver, Mark said gratefully. I can't thank you enough. The elderly woman waved away his thanks. Children need care. It is simple. She fixed him with a knowing look. Your boss, still giving trouble? Mark thought of Victoria's confession, of the unexpected kiss. It's complicated. Mrs. Patel nodded sagely. The complicated ones are always worth it in the end. Mark carried Emma home while Liam skipped alongside, chattering about his day at school. As he tucked them into bed later that night, he found himself thinking about Victoria, not as his demanding boss, but as a woman shaped by her own past, fighting her own battles. Tomorrow would bring, what? He wasn't sure. But for the first time since Victoria Winters had stormed into his professional life, Mark felt something like hope. Victoria didn't sleep that night. She paced her immaculate apartment, replaying the kiss in her mind, analyzing it from every angle. What had possessed her? Years of carefully constructed professional boundaries, shattered in an instant of weakness. But had it really been weakness? Or had it been the most honest moment she'd had in years? Mark Wilson confused her. He challenged her assumptions about success and dedication. He made her question the walls she'd built around herself. By morning, she'd made a decision. When Mark entered her office at precisely 9 a.m., she was ready. Close the door, she said, standing behind her desk. Mark complied, his expression guarded. Victoria, about yesterday. I owe you an apology, she interrupted. Several, actually. For my unreasonable expectations. For failing to recognize the challenges you face as a single parent. And for what happened afterward. Mark's face fell slightly at her last words. I see. No, I don't think you do, Victoria continued, coming around the desk. I'm not apologizing for the kiss itself. I'm apologizing for the timing and circumstances. Mark's eyebrows rose. I'm not sure I understand. Victoria took a deep breath. I've been unfair to you, Mark. The truth is, watching you balance fatherhood and career with such grace, it made me uncomfortable. It challenged my belief that success requires singular focus and sacrifice. We all make different choices, Mark said carefully. Yes, we do. And I'm beginning to wonder if I've been making the wrong ones. Victoria gestured to the chair across from her desk.